So I've said time and time again why we cover Conservative Home. One of the big reasons is the fact that this is written primarily it's articles written towards a conservative audience, which is kind of funny because you get to see the conservative worldview. Um, and it's very often kind of funny to poke holes at and to uh, say, hey, that wasn't reality you're discussing. And especially if you're Conservative Home at the moment and you want the Conservatives to go on and win the next election, they know full well that one of their big problems is that Conservative voters aren't turning out to vote Conservative, either staying at home completely or they are changing their vote. Primarily, of course, this is down to Rishi Sunak. Conservative voters really do not like Rishi Sunak. A lot are still incredibly annoyed that they never got a chance to vote for him in that last leadership contest. They still feel that there should have been a runoff between Rishi and Johnson. That would have been hilarious. That actually happened. Trust me, I would have been salivating at the moment to see those talks and debates between Rishi and Johnson. They would have been hilarious, but have also done incredible damage to the Conservative Party. And that's why, Rishi managed to get Suella Braverman on board, and Braverman managed to convince the right of the party to back Rishi Sunak, which inevitably managed to push Johnson away and stop that happening. But they know they've now got to try and warm Sunak up to a conservative audience. So we're going to see today the rewarming and in some cases the complete and absolute rewriting of history of some conservative prime ministers. And in this case, they asked the simple question, is Sunak change? And we're going to examine this. Can Sunak actually offer change? Or is he, we know he can't. Like I say, he's a completely weak prime minister. He has not chosen his own cabinet. He's incapable of doing so. Time and time again, he's shown he has no appetite really for rocking the boat. And to be honest, his stuff that he would love to do is in a very, very similar vein to Liz Truss, which I want to remind you, all that sort of conservative libertarianism, this free market fundamentally ideology that he has and would love to do, he can't do. Now, the difference, of course, between Liz and Rishi is that Rishi is at least a bit of a realist and understands that he can't do that at the moment. He saw what happened to Liz Truss, so he's not going to risk it. This has been labeled with him, of course, with inaction man. And we're going to go over this because I think it's well worth going over this to see how what is essentially an attempt to try and warm conservative voters up to the idea that Rishi Sunak is the man who can deliver change. Trust me, it's hilarious. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to the Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee. There is the Pony Club as well down below. So, as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help support the channel. Even if you do, just click the like and share button. So, on we go. Over to Conservative Home with an article entitled, Is Sunak Change? So, first, David Cameron resigned after the Brexit referendum. But never mind that the Conservatives had a replacement, Theresa May. Her pledge to redress the burning injustices implied that he hadn't done so. So she sounded like change, and polls suggested that voters liked it. Here's the thing. David Cameron also promised change. You may or may not remember one of the big Cameron speeches was the idea of the big society and that we are all in this together and that this is the change that Cameron is going to bring, that he was this new, nicer breed of conservatives that were going to address a lot of these social injustices. Did Cameron actually do any of that? No. And of course, you do talk on, again, Theresa May said the same thing. She promised change. made him to bring any change. But there you go. Um, but then, of course, she couldn't get a deal through the Commons, so had to go. But no matter. The Tories had a successor, Boris Johnson. He promised to get Brexit done, negotiated an agreement, and saw it endorsed by the electorate in 2019. However, campaigning was one thing and governing another, at least for Johnson. And he lost the trust of Conservative MPs and had to quit. Not at least that of the electorate as well. Gotta mention that. But hang on. Yet again, the Tories had a substitute, Liz Truss. Voters knew little about her, but seemed to willing to give her a chance. Voters did not get a chance. That is a very deceptive turn of phrase. The members of the Conservative Party got a vote on Liz Truss between, they got to choose between Liz and Rishi. Just, that's what happened. You seem to ignore the entire Conservative electoral process here. Kind of interesting that you're ignoring all that. But voters, if you are using the plural voters, so I'm assuming you mean all of the UK, never got a chance to decide on Liz Truss. That never happened. That is a fantasy. Only Conservatives actually got a chance to vote on whether they wanted Liz or Rishi. And they clearly chose Liz Truss. And, well, we all know what happened next. Because, as you say, then she crashed the car. Enter the man that she defeated, Rishi Sunak. In the wake of a plague, a war, two failed predecessors, and a party whose competence and the core of its electoral appeal had collapsed. To be honest, very true. That is where the Conservative Party currently stands. So once, twice, and three times in less than a decade, the Conservatives have got away with junking a failed leader and presenting his replacement as change for the better. But it wasn't change for a better. All you did was go on and offer pretty much the exact same piecemeal program. Even Johnson's version of leveling up was not really that different than David Cameron's version of the Northern Powerhouse. It was just, had a different label on it. But change in 13 years of Conservative government, no one can actually say we have seen a change for the better. We've actually actively seen a change for the worse. So, in Game of Thrones, Beric Darian is killed 6 times, but then brought back to life. Every time I'm a bit less, he says. Bits of you get chipped away. The Tories have revived themselves through 3 new leaders and 4 election wins, if you count the 2010 result among them. But it would be unprecedented for them to win a 5th term, let alone a Dorrington-style 6th. And this is where a lot of people have said they've run out of ideas. They've not really committed to bringing in new ideas. The party is vastly split. You have factions within factions fighting against each other. You've just got, again, a perfect example going into your Conservative Party election. Different factions fighting against each other. Supposedly, 30 MPs now saying we are not going to vote for any more tax rises permanently. You've then got, apparently, the threat that there are even more Conservative MPs who will add their name to that number. So there could be very well more than 30. And as we've always said, Rishi Sunak has come in or has been a prime minister with a apparent majority. On paper, looks like he's got a majority, but in reality, he's governing with a majority of 0. Some have even said that he's governing as if he was in a coalition government, the way that he has been acting. But then that's his own fault for being, well, a weak prime minister and not really going in and knocking heads together when he really needs to. But he continues. For bits of them, more or more have been chipped away. The Prime Minister is frustrated. His work isn't paying off with voters. But why would it? There are limits to their patience, especially amidst the worst fall in living standards on record. And remember, this is like the cost of living crisis has been going on for fair number of years at this point, and it's not like the Conservatives have actively done anything to try and solve it. Rishi Sunak's constant excuse for not doing anything is, "Oh, if we can get the economy to grow, then everything will get better." Meanwhile, we have seen him actively do things that could indeed improve the economy, but not do them. Instead, he's been involved in this technocratic populism that has now been coined, and he's effectively being known now as the first technocratic leader of, well, look, we could do this long-term project which is going to get really good long-term results and be really good for the United Kingdom, like HS2. It's going to cost this, but in reality, it's going to bring all these benefits, bring a massive boost to the economy. We can't do that at the moment because voters want jam today, or at least they say they want jam today, and that's what he's offering. So he continues. So they've interpreted the next election as a straightforward choice between the Conservatives and Labour. And it's very hard to see how Keir Starmer doesn't walk out of it into number 10. It follows that Sunak's only hope for winning is the next election not to be framed as Labour versus Tory, but as Keir versus Change. Since the breadth of Labour support is wide, if the polls are any guide, its depth is shallow. Here's the thing. If that is the Conservative strategy that they want to go in, that everyone knows and recognizes that the next real election really is Labour versus Tory, that's what the next election is. But the Conservatives want to make it actually no, it's Keir Starmer versus Change. Sunak and the Conservatives have had over 13 years to bring change. You started off this talk saying how people like May, Johnson, and Liz all had this idea for change, and of course David Cameron also promised change, but they did not deliver that change. They've had 13 years of constant broken promises of saying that they are going to deliver this monumental, magnificent change to the country, but have never done it. Why should voters believe that Rishi Sunak is any different? Because he's been in power for over a year, well, almost a year at this point. And what change has he brought? Oh, he's done the Edinburgh reforms. You mean taking the seatbelt off the UK economy? And that's the best way to describe it. The Edinburgh reforms are basically taking a seatbelt out of a car. Doesn't matter how safe a driver you are, sooner or later, you could end up in an accident and, crash the economy. Or someone else could crash into you, like we saw in 2008 with the US financial crisis, which had ripple effects across the globe. If you take out the safety, it's going to make your accident even worse, whether it is, by your own fault or by someone else, crashing into you. That's the best way, I've always said, to describe the Edinburgh reforms to people, and they get it. They understand it. But in reality, that's not a change for the better. It is very, very much so the idea of rich, because if you look at a lot of the focus groups that have been coming out, they ask a lot about what words describe, Rishi Sunak. And the one word is rich. And people are going, this guy is rich. He does not understand like the average working Briton. He is distant. He clearly does not get it. He has been seen doing time and time again things that would favor other rich people like himself or other people. This India deal that is potentially meant to be in the works, if that gets announced, his own company that he is at least somewhat owns, or I think he has an interest in, he benefits to that. So this is not going to go down well with voters. That's already very, very clear. But if you want to make it that Keir versus Change, then Sunak has to deliver change starting now. because otherwise it's going to get to the vote time. Voters aren't going to believe him, and rightly so. But he continues. So the Prime Minister is in an unusual position of not having to date presented himself as change, because he hasn't tried to present himself as anything much. And this is where he has earned the moniker Inaction Man. Not only that, I would challenge your assumption on this that he can actually bring change, because the Conservative Party is so fractured and he is such a weak leader. I think any change he might actually want to bring would be completely and utterly defeated on the floor. And I think he knows it. Um, so where is he? So when he entered Downing Street less than a year ago, Isaac Levno, the Conservatives' main strategist, told him that voters had given up on the Conservatives. All Sunak could do to regain their trust was to commit himself to delivering a few priorities and hope in doing so, or at least in trying to do so, regain their trust. He has done nothing to this. The economy, the idea at the moment, a lot of you, if you listen to a lot of UK economists, they'll tell you very, very plainly and bluntly, we are skirting the cliff edge of a potential economic crash. And they all sort of feel that it's coming and it could be about to happen. They just don't know when it's going to come. It could be something external, it could be something internal, but the idea that we are not going to end up in a recession, we are on that cliff edge. And Rishi Sunak, meant to be the one restoring the economy, encouraging growth, what's he done? He's done nothing. He's literally crossed his fingers with Jeremy Hunt and just gone, please, economy, please get better. That's all he's done. So few may doubt that effort, but many the result. Again, he's done nothing. He's put no effort into it, and the results speak for themselves. He hasn't done anything. For the five pledges are a work in progress, to put it mildly. Though he may well deliver at least the core one, which is to halve inflation this year, which, to be honest, he has done nothing to achieve. He's done nothing to try and bring down inflation. There has been no laws, nothing in Parliament to tackle inflation. He's just gone, please, inflation, go down. They have had a tale to tell about the challenges that facing Britain and how they could be met. Team Sunak knew from the start that the time would come when he had to tell his own story. And that is what his challenge is at this new conference speech. The likelihood is he's not going to be able to perform. I do not expect him to be able to perform. Most of what has come out of this, or at least what we're expecting to come out of this speech, isn't exactly wowing a lot of people. Conservatives went into this conference very, very downbeat. I highly doubt they're going to come out singing praises of Rishi Sunak or that they're going to win the next election. That's for sure. So the Prime Minister arrives in Manchester today for this year's Conservative Party conference, knowing that time is now. But what does he have to say for himself? Which is exactly. Trust me, a lot of people, including myself, are paying very close attention to that speech when it comes. So it's been hard to hear his voice during the run up through this noise. Much of what's being reported about his new plans have been leaked, since his inner circle is tight with the Conservatives and relations within the civil service is poor. There's little mystery about who's doing most of the briefing. So, we should take at least some of what we've read or seen about the proposals for net zero, the A levels, smoking, driving zones, HS2, levelling up, and the triple lock with a pinch of salt. But not all can glimpse through the fog of reporting the preoccupation with the value for money and the awareness of voter resistance in Uxbridge and across Europe to aspects of net zero, which begins to bite. Here's the thing. All that Uxbridge stuff was complete and absolute utter nonsense. net zero, all this stuff can be brought in and made, good and work with people, and it will be a massive economic benefit to the UK. The idea that you do not start this transition now, where we've already said the gun for net zero transitioning for green economies, the gun's already gone off. The start pistol has already been started. America's already ahead of us. Europe's already ahead of us. We had a level playing field at one point, but all of a sudden we've just stopped running. Or should we say, as some people have said, we've decided to slow down, and now America and Europe are racing ahead of us. If we get left behind in this race, it will be a disaster, and it will take decades to actually try and solve. That's essentially what Rishi Sunak has done. The Conservatives love to talk about the economic growth opportunities and etc. There's no more bigger opportunity than investing heavily in net zero. Yet they don't see that. Some dukes will say some Conservatives do. Of course, we talked about Chris Skidmore being very, very big on net zero, getting pretty much everything right, as we said when we covered his piece that he did, talking about the benefits and the positivity of net zero and what it could bring. But we'll see. So back to it. So the Prime Minister's agitation at HS2's soaring bills represent the former and his new hostility to the 20-mile-an-hour driving zones, the latter. The no smoking Sunak is likely to smile more on the tobacco bans, and yet he yearns for a new baccalaureate, a product of his own preoccupation with maths. These bits and pieces don't fit together as a story for change, but the shape of the Prime Minister's jigsaw, if he has one, won't be in place until the end of the conference, if then. I don't think he's going to even have one at all. He's not really going to have one at all. The idea that he's going to come out and you're finally going to sort of put all the pieces into place, and oh my word, this is Rishi Sunak. He's had an entire year. And he's failed to put that picture together in any single coherency. The idea that he is offering some sort of change is ridiculous, because we know voters want to move towards net zero. They know we care about the environment. They know they see the opportunities for this. They were warned, as in Conservative Home itself, by a Australian Conservative when they lost heavily. What was it, 2 years ago? I think it was, when Australia lost heavily on this, and their Conservatives got absolutely trounced. They said it very plainly. They did not go green. They did not invest in these types of things, and they got absolutely trounced by the other parties who did. It's a massive opportunity for Labour. But back to it. Were he unconstrained by the electoral cycle and the process of personal mandate, he could get busy with what must be sooner or later be done, namely reforming public services, scaling back the growth in state spending, and cutting taxes. Why isn't he doing that now, though? This whole idea of, he can't do it now. He's constrained. No, that's absolutely categorically false. Liz Truss went ahead with her own mandate with stuff that wasn't even in the Conservative manifesto. Of course, Boris Johnson went ahead with that, and we all know what happened to her. But the idea that Rishi Sunak can't go and do his own thing and start sorting stuff out, that's false. It's because he's such a weak prime minister that he can't actually go and do his own thing. He is not his own man. He is a kept prime minister, mostly in the clutches of the far right of the party. As we saw with the abandonment of these net zero principles, who has it made happy? The far right of the party. But continuing, so even then, within the preset of constraints, he could begin more thoroughly begin more thoroughly as recent governments haven't, to truly take back control, or rather to empower people to do so. Like what? um, the streets are theirs, not Extinction Rebellions to block. So too should be bank accounts, regardless of customers' views. So above all, our borders. What? Um, yeah, Extinction Rebellion. They've even know their own roadblocks have caused more annoyance than bringing their case to people. The whole bank accounts thing was just a complete sham, really, from Farage, more that is personal loss of status than anything else. We've seen the FCC, the financial controllers report saying that they've found no evidence of that to regard to customers' views, so that's nothing. And then above all, borders. Well, we know what Rishi Sunak could do: fund the asylum system, create safe routes. Job done. But he can't, because the hard right of the party is obsessed with just doubling down even more of the hard right to create this hostile environment that started under Theresa May when she was Home Secretary, back under David Cameron. And yet that has been the state for the Conservative view when it's come to border control or immigration. Just go, if your first hard right stance is failing, then you must have to go even harder on your hard right stance. But anyway, the first rule of a leader's speech is that he must be comfortable with it, and he won't be, because it won't be his speech, as we've said. It would do Rishi Sunak no good to pretend to be someone he isn't. And his natural tendency is to be enthusiastic about science, maths, and tech. Congratulations that he's so enthused with that, but he actually hasn't done anything around that. That he hasn't been a storyteller to date doesn't mean that he hasn't a story to tell. His net zero speech made the point that he wasn't a newish kid on the block. He wasn't even in Parliament during the coalition era. This will be his first conference speech as party leader, and only his second in 3 years. It could be could he reasonably ask it and the audience beyond who takes a stand on what he believes is right, him or Keir Starmer? I doubt he's going to be doing that. He could say, you think I raised taxes too high? He could ask on Wednesday. Maybe, but remember, I quit the government rather than raise them higher. You think politicians tell people what they want to hear? Perhaps. But I said last year that just cutting taxes would risk more market confidence. Not enough of you listened. Now think about what happened next. Tactless, sure. Counterproductive, possibly. He is not going to say that. Absolutely no way. The fact that you have Tory MPs right now rebelling openly, saying, we want you to cut taxes, when if they did, you would have unfunded tax cuts, which we've seen the consequences of that. But that is the part of the party that is rebelling. And once again, I think we are going to go into a sea of troubles. And I think his conference speech is going to be so muddled, so messy, that it speaks to no one. It's going to be an attempt to speak to everyone, and no one will be pleased. No one will be happy. And trust me, when the conference closes, no one is going to leave with smiles on their faces. But the summer recent polls suggest that voters are beginning to engage with politics again. And the reaction to his speech in a bubble will matter less than the voices of more widely, insofar as they notice at all. The odds are against Sunak are fabulously long, and voters may well plump for the man who tells them what they want to hear. Keir Starmer's being far more honest, I think, than Rishi Sunak on that, rather than the man who tells them unrepentant truths. Nevertheless, the Prime Minister cannot please all the people all the time, or even much of his party most of the time. So he must settle for pleasing enough of the people enough for the time he has left, or trying to. And he's already been trying that for a year, and he's pleased no one. He has pleased no one. And this is because, first of all, Rishi Sunak is a weak prime minister, and you fail to acknowledge of the fracturing that has occurred since 2016 in the Conservative Party. The fact that you've got factions within factions. That's the big problem in the Conservative Party. And Rishi Sunak is such a weak prime minister. He did not choose his own cabinet. He has not put any policy forward because there is even a massive doubt whether that policy would be successful. I think that the autumn budget, is going to be very interesting if when Sunak tries to pass that. I think there is going to be the first time that they try to pass it, it's not going to pass. And I think they're going to use this as a symbolic vote to say, we are showing our displeasure, but the next time it comes for a vote, they could pass it. I think that is what you could see of the budget, because the Conservatives know they do not want to, shall we say, take out another leader, because they know that instantly they will have to go to a general election that will not go well for them. And trust me, blocking a budget, even symbolically, will have big economic ramifications and ripples across the UK economy. So yeah, look forward to that when the budget comes up. Because if you've got already 30 and supposedly more Conservative MPs threatening about tax rises, when you could have a budget that says, well, we might have to raise taxes. Oh boy, that could get interesting. Well, let's finish it off. Which means that taking some risks at first glance, that is out of character. Look a bit longer, and that seems less so. Can Sunak really be an agent of change? We're about to find out. No, Sunak is not an agent of change, not by a long shot. Not by a long shot. Sunak could not change his trousers without someone in the Conservative Party raising a quibble that those trousers are the wrong color, or that they're not pinstriped, or that he's put the wrong belt on. That's how bad Rishi Sunak is, that he can't even choose which pair of trousers he would like to wear today, because the Conservatives would rebel about his choice of trousers. The idea he could bring any sort of change is ridiculous. Full stop. Because this story does not acknowledge the mess and the state of the Conservative Party it is truly in. Instead, what this tries and does is it tries to warm up an audience that is already not very Sunak enthusiastic, and try and make them enthused to, at least maybe when Sunak's somewhat clapped its speech, at least maybe there might be someone clapping in the hall. There might be very few claps by the end of it, but that will be it. It won't be enthusiastic. And to be honest, on Wednesday, I look forward to Rishi Sunak's speech, because I'll tell you now, I wish I could have in that hall a applausometer to monitor the applause that Rishi Sunak gets, because I don't think they're going to be very loud at all, to be honest. I am looking forward to his speech. We will cover it here on it. But yeah, is Sunak the man to bring change to the UK? Well, the Conservatives have had 13 years in power, since David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, all promising change, all failing to bring that change. Why should anyone believe that Sunak is any different? And even worse, people forget he is almost in the same model of Liz Truss. It's just that Liz Truss was just wild and reckless. At least Rishi Sunak is somewhat constrained by the fact that he knows the entire Conservative Party could turn on him in a dime. And even now, there are sections of the Conservative Party that do not agree with him, are angry, upset, all wanting different things, all rubbing up against each other angrily, agitating fires constantly. It's a mess. And they need someone that can sort out that mess. Sunak is not that person. He's gone in there, put in there by the far right of the party, If he loses that side of the party and that support, he's done. He's done. It's over. But what will happen? Well, we'll see. We'll see what this conference speech is. But this has to be, as I've said before, the performance of a lifetime for Rishi Sunak, and he is not going to be able to deliver that performance. He has not shown any tendency that he can deliver that type of performance. It is going to be a speech that tries to appeal to everyone, but will please no one. And as a result, people will walk out of that room and go, I don't think Rishi Sunak should be the leader of the Conservative Party anymore. And if that becomes the prevailing view of the people leaving the conference, things could get very, very interesting very quickly. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, please do remember to leave your like, share, and subscribe button down below. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.